Hello, my name is Calum Chace. I am a writer and speaker about our future with artificial intelligence. AI, and advanced AI, is a subject I've been very interested in for as long as I can remember. And the guilty little secret is the reason for that is I read too much science fiction when I was young, and I still read it. I love it. And anybody who reads science fiction thinks about AI because AI appears in a lot of science fiction. It played no part in my career. I had 30 years as a journalist and a businessman. I worked for the BBC and then later had a column in the FT. I spent most of my time though in business as a marketer and then a strategy consultant, and finally helping to run and then running a series of small companies. And I retired from that in 2011, which gave me the time to spend more time on my hobby, which was reading about AI. And my timing was perfect because the year after I retired, the big bang happened in AI. So AI got going as a science back in 1956 at a conference in Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. And for the first several decades of its life, it did some interesting things, but progress was slow, and there were a couple of AI winters in which you couldn't raise money to pay for AI research. But then in 2012, a man called Jeff Hinton got a type of statistics called machine learning, and a specific subset of that called deep learning. He got that to work in AI, and then AI started doing very impressive things, and most importantly, started making money. And that meant that it became big news and everybody started paying attention. And just at that time, I was finishing writing my first nonfiction books about AI. So I've written two nonfiction books, one called Surviving AI and the other called The Economic Singularity. And people started asking me to give talks. So I spent a few years happily trotting around the world, giving talks about AI and pontificating about what might happen in the future. And then of course, COVID happened, which stopped all that dead. But hopefully the world is recovering from that, including the speaking world. So I can get back on the road. Any technology can have good uses and good effects, and bad uses and bad effects. That's true of fire, it's true of hammers, it's true of nuclear weapons, it's true of cars. Anything can be used for good or bad, and regardless of the intention of the user, it can have good or bad outcomes. And AI is no different. AI is simply potentially more powerful than any of the foregoing. I'm reasonably optimistic, and my optimistic is founded in experience, in the world's experience, which is that technology on balance has created tremendous benefit for humanity. The more powerful our technology has got, the better our lives have got. Yes, we've done terrible things with technology. We have blown up enormous amounts of people and buildings and so on. But the world is a better place to be alive now than it's ever been because of technology. And I believe the same thing will happen with AI. Why shouldn't it? It's true. There are serious potential downsides from advanced AI. And we can go into that if you want. But I think that on balance, it's reasonable to believe that we'll get many more of the upsides. Now, in education tech, in EdTech particularly, where AI will help, it will be in a lot of different ways. To take one example, and perhaps in the medium time, the most powerful, I think we will all have our own tutor. We'll all have our own personalized AI tutor. These things will not be conscious, not for a very long time anyway, but they will, just by using algorithms, they will know our level of learning in any given subject better than we do. They'll know what we know, they'll know what we don't know. They'll know what we need to know next. And they'll know also how we best learn. The idea that humans are either visual learners or auditory learners or kinetic learners, that's been debunked somewhat, but it is true that we all learn in different ways. I learn best in the morning, other people learn best in the afternoon, and other people learn best in the evening. For some odd reason, I read better when I'm lying down. I'm sure other people read better when they're sitting. And we've all got these idiosyncrasies, and our teaching agent, our educational assistant, will know of all these things and will help us, will coach us to learn much quicker. Now, it doesn't mean that education suddenly becomes easy for all of us, sadly. We have to exercise our neurons, and that's hard work. Learning a language, for instance, I'm trying to learn Spanish. And particularly at my age, it's quite hard. It was easy when I learned French when I was a teenager, but learning a language in your 60s, I can tell you, it's quite hard. So education won't suddenly become easy as if we're all Neo in the Matrix and just uploading a skill. Now I know Kung Fu. Sadly, that's not going to happen until we're going to upload our brains, and that's a long way off. But educational assistants, personalized educational assistants, will be very powerful. It doesn't mean for a long time that teachers will be made redundant. What it does mean is that teachers will be able to change from being lecturers and even worse, administrators, which is how a lot of teachers spend a lot of their time now, to being coaches. And not just coaches of the students who are lagging, but coaches of the stars as well. They'll be able to spend time one-on-one with students doing things that machines can't do, because the human touch is going to be important for a long time. And that will be, I think, a much better future for teachers. So I think AI is going to be great news for students and teachers alike. Sure. This follows from a view I have that the idea of technological unemployment is not overdone. We are going to see technological unemployment, not for probably 30 years, maybe 40 years, but assuming that machines continue to get more powerful, and assuming that assuming they continue to get more powerful, they will eventually get to the point where they can do most of the things that we do for money at some point. But they're not just getting more powerful, they're getting more powerful at an exponential rate. Most people know that the smartphone in their pocket has more compute power than NASA had when they sent Neil Armstrong to the moon in 1969. And that's an extraordinary thing. In your pocket, little device is the equivalent of a supercomputer some decades ago. And in fact, nowadays that thing's out of date. It's not a smartphone that's got that much power. It's a toaster that's got that much power. That's because of exponential growth in the power of computers, and that's not stopping. So looking forward into the future, in 30 years' time, if that exponential growth continues, it may not. There's some pretty good reasons to think it will. In 30 years' time, the machines we have will be 1 million times more capable than the machines we have today. I don't want to be competing with those machines in the workplace. I think they'll be able to do most of the things that humans can do for money. That doesn't mean that humans become irrelevant. That those machines won't be conscious, probably. We don't know for sure, but they probably won't be conscious, whereas we are. So that makes us different, and that makes us still valuable. But it does mean we can't earn a living by working. So we're going to have a different type of economy. And I won't go into the details, but I call it fully automated luxury capitalism. And in that world, you won't have an education in order to get and keep a job and to get promoted, because you won't have a job. You'll get an education because being educated is actually fun. It's hard work, but hard work can be fun. And it makes life more worth living. The more you know about any subject, the more fun that subject is. And also, the more you realize you don't know. There seems to be an almost infinite amount to learn about any subject, which means we'll never run out of things to learn. We'll never run out of fun to have. We don't have to worry about getting bored. So education won't be about vocation, because you won't have a vocation. Life will be a holiday. Life will be a vacation. So education will be about making that vacation more interesting and more fun. So that's why I say that at that point, and it is a long time away, probably 30 years, I mean, it might be sooner, it might be later, but in that sort of order of time, that education should become vacational, not vocational. I do think students should learn about AI because it is our most powerful technology, and that's going to increasingly be true. So being ignorant about AI means you're going to be ignorant about the thing that's changing the world and is going to influence the work that we all do and the lives we lead. So we should all know more about it. We should know to some degree how it works, but we don't all need to know, how to write or how to develop an algorithm that deploys deep learning, any more than we all need to know how to fix the carburetor on a car. And that's actually showing my age, because I don't suppose cars have carburetors anymore. These electric management systems have done away with all that. But we don't need to know how to fix a car. In fact, very few people these days know how to fix a car, because it's mostly done by computers. But we all need to know how to drive a car, and we need to know roughly how it works so that we can drive it. And I think the same is true with AI. And the process of deploying AI across the economy and across the rest of our lives is going to take a long time. It's very complicated. So many people are going to get careers in deploying AI. So yes, students should know about AI just to navigate life, and also to get interesting careers. And there's another sense in which people should understand AI, which is that because it's our most powerful technology, and because technology shapes life, AI is going to shape our lives in really dramatic ways. The economic singularity, which is the arrival of joblessness, is one of them. There's others. We're going to change the way we do farming completely. We're going to live a lot longer. And eventually we're going to have superintelligence. So these changes are going to overturn everything we know about life. The more people who understand that, the better. I do worry that we are charging headlong into this future of total change, and very few people understand the gravity of what's happening. That's dangerous, because change that you don't understand is scary, and scared people make bad decisions. So we will be better placed if more people understand roughly how AI works, how to deploy it, particularly if they're going to get a career in it, but also the implications, the social and economic implications of it, so that we can all make smart decisions about the future instead of dumb ones. I doubt there's many schools which are overusing modern technology. And I know that there are a lot of schools in England, the country I come from, which are dramatically underusing it. So I don't think we need to slow it down. There obviously has to be a balance. I mean, students learn a great deal from whatever technology they have to hand, whether it be a book, the internet, AI, teaching assistants. They learn a great deal from human teachers, and they learn a great deal from each other. So, we shouldn't lose sight of the importance of any of those three aspects. The more we can get kids together, talking about their lessons, in between talking about flirting and all the other things that they do, the better. And the more we can get teachers able to do as much one-to-one with pupils, as well as dealing with them en masse, the better. But we should be using the tools that we have, and we're not using them enough. There's techniques and approaches which AI and other technologies help, techniques and approaches which have been around for quite a long time and aren't being used enough, like flipped lessons, like competency-based learning, and I'm sure your audience is very familiar with those things. We should be doing more of that. And in some parts of the world, they're being used a lot. And in some parts of the world, they're being used partially. So in England, where I come from, the private schools, which confusingly are called public schools, they use them a lot. They use flipped learning a lot. And in the state sector, not so much. And that's a shame. And actually, it is increasing the education gap between the rich and the poor. And that's something that people should be thinking about much harder. I think it's mostly reluctance to use it. Reluctance sometimes at the national scale, sometimes at the organizational scale of teaching as an industry, and sometimes at the level of individual teachers. Teaching is a very conservative profession, and teachers, quite rightly, often feel besieged. They feel undervalued. They feel that they have massive amounts of bureaucracy imposed on them, and not unreasonably, they can get quite truculent about that. And when somebody comes along and says, don't do what you were trained to do and what you've been doing your entire career, now do this new different thing, it's not surprising that they don't rush into that idea with open arms. So I think that the sad fact that techniques like flipped learning, which we know work, the fact that they're not being used more widely is because they haven't been used rather than because they're failing. I will be talking about a lot of the things that we've discussed just now. I probably will start by trying to persuade everybody that we do live at the best time that there has ever been in human history so far. And I'll go on to explain a little bit about what AI is and what it isn't, and how we got it and how far it's progressed so far, because it's a slightly complicated thing to describe AI. It's a slightly complicated thing to define. So I'll probably start with that, and then I'll talk about the implications, some of which we've covered in this conversation.